All right, everybody, before we dive into today's episode, we are brought to you by two headline sponsors, the first one being Elite Sweets. Elite Sweets is redefining the way we think about sweets with their Elite Donuts. The Elite Donut is a better-for-you donut that is packed with 13 grams of protein. They're gluten-free, keto-friendly, and contain only 1 gram of sugar. These have become a staple in our house as we look to have a healthy diet and want products that if we do feel like having that sweet or, having a cheat meal or just a cheat snack, something that's not going to completely ruin our diet. So Elite Sweets have become that. It's a donut. It tastes delicious. It tastes just like those shitty donuts that you're used to growing up, except these ones are high in protein, gluten-free. They're keto-friendly for all you keto dieters out there. And most importantly, in my mind, they only contain 1 gram of sugar. So get yours today at EliteDonut.com or on Amazon. If you use code ShaneWhite30 at checkout, you'll get 30% off your order. And that code works on both Amazon and EliteDonut.com. Again, that code is ShaneWhite30, all one word, and you'll get 30% off your order. Today's episode is also brought to you by routine. When we sleep, we lose between a pound and a pound and a half of water, mostly just from sweating while you sleep, which is something I did not know before I started working with the guys over at Routine. They've come up with a product that they call Morning Routine. It's a single-serve packet that I take every morning, and it contains half an organic lemon, 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, Himalayan sea salt, all 6 essential electrolytes, and most importantly, no sugar. Most people wake up, they grab that cup of coffee first thing in the morning. What most people don't realize is if you wake up dehydrated, which is easy to do when you wake up from a long night's sleep, your body sweats and expels a lot of vapors while you're sleeping. Instead of grabbing that cup of coffee, try grabbing a morning routine packet. Each of these, as I mentioned, is made up of all these great ingredients that helps rehydrate you in the morning, get your metabolism going once again. I just take one of these little single-serve packets, tear one open, throw it into, just a shaker bottle or 20 ounces of water, shake it up, and drink it first thing in the morning. You feel a difference. You really do feel hydrated again. You can tell the difference when you use the product and then go off of it again, the difference you feel first thing in the morning. Routine, trusted ingredients, made convenient. You can go to yourroutine.com and use code ShaneWhite30. Again, ShaneWhite30, same coupon code as the last brand, Elite Sweets. If you use code ShaneWhite30 at checkout on yourroutine.com, you can get 30% off your first order. All right, everybody. I have a great guest coming up next, and I will talk to you in just a second. All right, everybody. Welcome to the show, Grace. Everybody who's listening, it's my pleasure to introduce Grace Cheng from Mylk Labs. Grace, welcome to the show.
Hi, it's so nice to be here.
It's a pleasure having you. For everyone listening who doesn't know what Mylk Labs is, would you mind giving everyone a rundown of the brand?
Yeah. Mylk Labs is an oatmeal company. I know first off, it's not the sexiest thing in the world, but it's something that I'm absolutely passionate about. It was really a company born out of convenience. I made the products for myself. And, my background, I started modeling when I was 17 and I was traveling the world throughout college. And oatmeal was the one constant in my life for the past decade. It was literally my go-to every single morning, the only thing that got me through like literally my busiest days. And I would travel just putting oatmeal into like a little Ziploc bag, going to my local, or not local, but any Starbucks or any coffee shop I can find. I'm like, hey, can I get a cup and some hot water? And I just make it myself because, everything else on the market was, I'm not going to badmouth anyone, but kind of gross, borderline, just like very gummy texture, too much sugar. Anyways, long story short, I'm very particular about what I like, what I would personally put in my body, and Mylk Labs is exactly that. And rather than just keeping it to myself, I thought I'd share it with the world, and to that end, Mylk Labs was born.
Love it. Very cool. And where did you come up with the name?
So everyone thinks actually Mylk Labs is an oatmeal company, a milk company, an ice cream company. And I think that, somewhere along the lines, there was a little bit of confusion, but ultimately, when I first started the company, Mylk, spelled with a Y, obviously refers to non-dairy milks. And when I started the company, I had this brilliant idea to have a unique base using roasted almond meal mixed in with the oats. And that essentially would imitate the flavor, the texture, and the creaminess of like an almond milk cooked oatmeal. And
Okay.
you just have water. And that's essentially how Mylk ended up in the name Mylk Labs. Labs, obviously nothing artificial about it. I created the products in my home kitchen. I mean, it was just a remake of what I was eating every single day for years and years.
Yeah.
It was just more so something where, for me, I don't like to start my day off with a ton of sugar. I like to have, at least a good amount of fiber and whatnot just to start my day. So I kind of worked backwards with just the nutritional profile in mind, and then played around with the ratios of all of the products, and then kind of came up with the final tasting product with, all the specs I wanted to hit. And then also it tastes good and just be the perfect product. And so that's how I came up with Labs, which, together is Mylk Labs.
Love it. Very cool. No, that's cool. I always love to ask, especially as we think about going 0 to 1. It's one thing to be, you were modeling and on the go and you're creating something out of your own kitchen. It's a big leap to go from that to launching a brand. So I'm assuming there must have been a jumping point. Did you start sharing your homemade oats with other people? Was there something that kind of was the impetus for you being like, hey, wait a minute, I think I could sell this?
To be honest, I was that kid. You're a little kid, and everyone's like, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And everyone's like, the little boys are like firefighters, and the girls are saying whatever. I think growing up in a very entrepreneurial household, both my parents have their own businesses, and I've always known that I wanted to start my own company. So that was my answer. I was like, I want to start my own business. And, at just a very young age, I think it was something where I never knew what it was, but I always knew that I never wanted to work for anybody else. Little did I know that came with double the amount of hours and workload and just pressure, when it comes to work. But at the same time, if you do what you love, it really becomes more of a lifestyle, which is what Mylk Labs is to me because I'm so passionate about it. I think the aha moment was really just, I went to business school at USC because I knew I wanted to start a business. I wanted that foundation set. I was just more so thinking, all right, I'm going to go through school. I'm going to prepare myself for when I know I'm ready, and then I'll just play by ear. When I was in college, I was traveling so much. So I scheduled out my class schedule so that I would go to class Tuesdays and Thursdays. There were like 10-hour days, back to back to back classes. And then Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'd either be on set for a 10-hour shoot, flying out to the East Coast for less than 12 hours and then back for school, or going to casting. It was like, thinking back, I don't even know how I did it. And if I had to do it all over again, I can't. So I think through all of that, I've always wanted to model full time and see where that could take me, and just be able to experience it all in. When I graduated college, that was my opportunity too. So I went to New York, and it was my first New York Fashion Week. And the way it works is it's a whole circuit. You start in New York, you go to London, then Milan, then Paris. And so, my first experience, my first show I walked for was Marc Jacobs. And that was amazing because that is the show to walk for, especially a new face in the modeling industry. And it was like the most insane experience. I can't even tell you, Shane. It was so tiring.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, it sounds crazy.
But, it was a really great first experience, especially with the entire circuit of like just Fashion Week in all the major cities. But when I came back, the most exciting thing that I was looking forward to was just having my oatmeal every day again. It was,
Really?
yeah, it was just something where, you know, I was on the go all the time and I was literally from like Airbnb to Airbnb, and it was something that was so hard for me to have every day. And when I came back, I was like, all right, Grace, you're the kind of person who needs a set schedule, something that's organized. And modeling is the complete opposite. I get calls from my agency like, hey, Grace, can you get on a flight this afternoon to London? And I'm just like, what? No, it takes me like an hour just to get to the airport. And a lot of times I'm like, you know, London is a 2-day trip. That for me is like a 14-hour flight. And so
Wait, that's crazy. So in that industry, you might just get a call that you need to go all the way to London for a day.
yeah, you know, normally international flights are like, you get a couple of days in advance notice, but a lot of times I won't even get my flight information until the night before I have to fly out.
Wow.
So it's a lot of times.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. And whenever you book jobs, it's kind of like, hey, Grace, can you be on set tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. in Malibu? And I'm here in like the suburbs, and I'm just like, okay, let me just drop everything and go do
To
that.
get there. Yeah. Is that,
Yeah.
so that's a really interesting, because I mean, obviously I know the CPG space. Going from modeling to CPG, that had to have been quite just a shock to the system. I mean, it's such a, you talk about night and day difference of what your world looks like. Was there a point where you were just like, I'm tired of either the modeling side, or was it more of you were jumping to Mylk Labs type of situation, or both?
So modeling has always, you know, between us, or I guess
Yeah.
and anyone else that's
and everyone listening.
modeling has always been kind of a love-hate relationship for me. The love part is being able to like grow up and see all these big brands and, you know, be the face of big campaigns that you never, ever thought you could be a part of. And it's humbling. But at the same time, a lot of modeling is very surface level, right? How you look. If you're able to represent like the crowd that they're trying to sell to. So a lot of times I'll be like the face of a campaign targeting like the Chinese market, or so funny. So, and I don't know how much I can share on here, but like,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, whatever you want.
a lot of times, right, it is very surface level. So for example, if
Sure.
I'm casting for a job that I'm you know, doing like a poolside shoot, there was one time, and this was years and years ago, I've been modeling for 10 years now, so I remember in the beginning they were like, oh, send a picture of you in a bikini from behind, we want to see what the model's butt looks like, because there's a scene where she's like laying by the pool or whatever, and obviously I didn't get the job. I'm like
That has to be changing a lot, unless it hasn't. And I just feel like with everything that's happened in the last few years, there's no way that's like acceptable.
yes and no. I think it's like, if it's not said out loud, I mean, of course, if you're going to cast a model for a bikini shoot, she has to be, you know, she has to make your bikinis look good. And I
Sure.
completely understand that. I'm not against it. If I was that company, I would choose the same. I think now there's more variety when it comes to like body shapes and inclusivity with all the different types of bodies. But ultimately, I know I'm smart. I know I can build something. And that's not something that I could do in modeling. I can build my career. I can shoot for, you know, I did campaigns for Bottega Veneta. I've done lots of shows, and, you know, Estee Lauder, like the very big household names that are just, everyone knows them. But
Sure. Yeah.
and I'm so like humbled to be able to shoot for big brands like that. But at the same time, I think I have never felt the kind of achievement and sense of like, what is that word I'm looking for? Like sense of accomplishment, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
When I, you know, compared to Mylk Labs and seeing my hard work come to fruition and landing those accounts, seeing it grow, like getting my first meal, that kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. There's something different, I'm sure, between like building something, selling something, and profiting versus just, it sounds like the modeling agency, and not agency, but I guess that whole industry is just, you're sitting and waiting and hoping you get a big opportunity, and then you're hoping you do really well, and then you're kind of waiting for the next one. It seems like there's not a lot of control.
Yeah, there isn't, because it all goes through the agency. I mean, granted, I owe so much of my life to the modeling industry and my position, like not position, like the work that I've done, because
Sure.
I mean, I made a lot of money. I self-funded Mylk Labs completely, and I've never
Good for you.
money for the company. And I think it's part of like my slow growth business model, which has prevented me from like needing funding or anything at this point. I mean, granted, we're only 4.5 years in, but at the same time, like so many CPG brands look for funding like before they even launch or right when they launch. You know what I mean? So,
Definitely. Yeah. I know it's funny I told you before we started recording, being at RX Bar, I knew RX Bar's story, and I knew that they bootstrapped and self-funded it. And that's why it got such a big multiple, and it was such a big deal in the industry. But it's been funny over the last, even since COVID and starting this podcast and everything I do, how few brands do that. I know it's not like it's an easy thing to do. Otherwise, a lot of brands would. But man, it's such a different. I feel like it's such a different outcome, most likely at the end of the journey. If you're raising a ton of money, there's just no way it's the same outcome that I guess I watched happen. And I always thought that was the norm. Obviously, it's not. It was kind of a very unique situation, but good for you. I mean, that gives you a ton of power, especially if you ever do want to sell it.
I think honestly, people look for funding when they are trying to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't you seen that? I don't think that nowadays, if you want to be a national brand, if you want to have rapid growth, you almost have to have funding. I don't know any companies who don't. And so many people I've talked to, they're like, Grace, you should get funding. You should go national. You should, keep launching into new retailers. And I'm just like, no. At this point, I think COVID is honestly what messed up my focus. Because so the way I started to build my company was mainly food service, coffee shops, hotels, corporate co-working, all of that. But then I lost all of my customers when it came to, the pandemic.
Yeah,
and
sure.
That's actually when I started really focusing on e-commerce and also launching into retail, because people were clearing the shelves on in grocery stores. It was the only place people were still spending money. And I mean, the growth was great, especially since it was all just pretty organic, in the sense where I did all my pitches, I do all my sales. And then, slowly we got into 1, into 2, into 3 chains, and then, rapidly more. But it came to a point where and for me, I was so focused on just expanding. I didn't really take the time to look at how we were performing. And so a year later, after I got into all of these retail chains, I finally sat down and looked at the numbers, and I was like, holy shit, we're not moving product in a lot of these stores.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because
it's a huge issue. A lot of people don't realize that until it's too late.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, being able to nurture and grow within a customer that you've already acquired is much easier than getting a brand new customer. But even then, it's I think a lot of us, including me, just don't realize that we're just so focused on increasing the doors, the door count, and then just forgetting about all the customers that we've committed to. We've promised them not only product on their shelves, but also the support to help move product off the shelves. And at the end of everything, and it was only not until earlier this year, I want to say, that I realized I totally just went down this deep rabbit hole, and I was like, all right, I got to stop. And the best way I like to describe this is that I've adopted all of these children over the past year to 2 years. And I realized I never wanted any of them. And now they're expensive, and I have to take care of them and I have to nurture them till they grow up, And
yeah, it's a good way to think about it.
And so, honestly, we just launched in Whole Foods Northeast and then Target in California and then, a bunch of other natural chains, but it was the last of it. I've turned down everything else. I've stopped submitting for category reviews. And it's not because we're better than everyone else because we don't want to. It's really honestly, yes, I don't want to, but for the reason that I would rather spend all my time and money now to nurture and take care of all these kids I've already adopted. I can't.
Yeah, no, for sure. I know. I used to always hear this analogy of it's one thing to get the doors. I'm going to butcher this. Obviously step one is getting the doors, but it's more important to move the product off the shelf than just getting it on the shelf. And a lot of people forget that latter part. And I know one of the better examples, I can't remember what podcast it was. Jimmy DeChico from Super Coffee explained it really well, how they did that, where they'd get a retailer and they would build it up, sample, figure out how to get velocities really high in every retailer early on, and then go to the next one. And they just kept replicating that. It took a long time, right? But it does do a lot more damage than it does to pay slotting and get on shelves and then not be able to move the product off the shelf. That is an expensive problem to solve. So for you, then I guess my question is, it sounds like now you're getting into some major retailers. So for everyone listening, can you give a little more of a background on so what makes your product, different if they're in a retailer and they see Mylk Labs, what specifically in the product is like the big, differentiator that you would explain to people who are listening and want to give it a try? Because obviously you love it. You created a brand around it, but would love to know what the differentiator is for folks who want to try it.
Yeah, definitely. So, from the outside looking in, right, you go into an aisle, a certain category, and we're talking oatmeal right now. So all of the oatmeal cups, a lot of customers are just going to look at the different brands and these are pretty much the same. They don't really know unless somebody's there educating them exactly why product A and product B are different. But the truth is no two products on the market are exactly the same unless they're private label. Everything is different, whether that's being, offered or the sugar content or, just overall the quality of the ingredients and things like that. For Mylk Labs, I always lead my pitch when it comes to wholesale sales or whatever. I always lead with 3 top things because this, I feel as though, is the biggest differentiator to most of my competitors on the market. Obviously, there's a lot of other things, but, nowadays, vegan, gluten-free, non-GMO, all of these things, they're not special. They're expected. It's supposed to be part of the foundation now. If you don't have those things, what are you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Such high expectations now. So I never even lead with that because it's so are every single other, all the other brands here. And for Mylk Labs, we take pride in really just being as minimal as possible. I don't believe in all of the fillers, all of the extra things that people put in a product because truth be told, you wouldn't be putting all those products if you made it at home.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's a good way to think about it.
Yeah, Mylk Labs is truly homemade. So the top 3 things that we always lead with: 1, 4 to 6 ingredients. That's it. Every single thing that you see on the ingredient list, you can pronounce, you know what it is, and none of them are natural flavors. So no added flavors. There are companies who actually market natural products, real ingredients, all of that, so hard. And then you look in the back and it's there's no real X, Y, and Z. It's only just natural flavor. But when it comes to natural and artificial flavoring, they are essentially the same, 80 to 90% chemical junk. The only difference is its source, but everything else, including the nutritional profile, what it is, it's the same. It's a marketing gimmick of what they can label natural or artificial. So with Mylk Labs, if I say it's blueberry maple, you get real freeze-dried blueberries, single ingredient. Everything we source is single ingredient. It has no preservatives, no added colorings, nothing, no flavors. And then with maple, everyone uses maple sugar, right? It's so overwhelming, the flavor. We use maple sugar. I pay like an arm and a leg to get that shipped from Vermont to California just to use it in my product. And it's stupid expensive. It is so expensive, but to me, it's worth it. You know, we have the real thing. Why do we have to trick our customers into believing they're getting the real thing by using whatever added flavors when the real thing is available to us? And I know why. It's to cut costs and charge the customer just as much and pocket that extra margin. And I get it from a big company standpoint, but that's never how I wanted to go about, you know, selling a product, because I would never sell something that I wouldn't eat myself at home or make myself at home. And then the third thing is we only use 5 grams of organic coconut sugar to sweeten for an entire serving for all of our different flavors. You'll never see anything more.
Awesome. So it's 5 grams, like kind of like a sprinkle.
Yeah,
it's not that much, right? Like a little...
No, it's really little compared to a lot of the other brands. So on average, in the natural channel, it's about 50% less sugar. And then if you're comparing to like Quakers, their oatmeal is a third sugar.
Yeah.
I literally did the calculation. So.
And it's interesting too. I mean, I'm on your website, and you know, a 6-pack for $19.98 for the flavor I'm looking at. I mean, that's not that bad. Like, you think about for wanting to get a healthy breakfast and you want something that's convenient on the go. And these are shelf stable, right?
Yeah, you can throw them in your bag. You just add hot water or milk, depending on where you are, and it's ready in 3 minutes. It's so easy. And that price breaks down to about $3 a meal. And like, people spend $5-6 on a coffee. And
I was going to say, yeah.
You know?
Usually coffee's more than that. So
yeah,
that makes a ton of sense.
It's funny because the way that Quakers has just trained the human mind to think about oatmeal, it's like, well, why am I paying so much for a single serving, which is like a sustainable, real ingredient breakfast, right? When I can get it for 99 cents a packet or a cup for Quakers.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, if you want to buy a packet full of sugar, please be my guest. But, you know, that's not something where we can compare. And we probably take less margin than Quakers does, even though their products are so much cheaper. And it's because they use all of the fillers. It's just oats, sugar, and then the artificial flavoring that they use. And, you know, we think it's worth paying more on our end. And that just coincidentally gets passed on to the customer. But at a $3 price point, it's really not that unreasonable.
I would agree. Yeah, I totally would agree. So it sounds like you've already gone through that stage where you maybe got too many doors. So you kind of, have you peeled doors back, or have you just stopped bringing on new doors?
We just stopped bringing on new doors. It's something where, you know, in order to launch in any chain, it's a huge investment, whether it's a free fill or commitment to quarterly promotions. Do you know how much oatmeal I have to sell in order to make back $2,000 worth of spend on a display?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. At our X Bar, I was in charge of all of our trade spend and promotional management. So I was always the one that was like, hey, Shane, is it cool if we spend this much on slotting or this much on a end cap? And I was always doing that math. And that's what we would do. We'd go back and be like, well, do we think we can, you know, sell this much more over, you know, we would do the same math you're talking about. But it's crazy. It's wild how much that real estate costs. Yeah.
And honestly, I almost guarantee nobody is positive during the promo months if they're paying like not only for all of the discounts through the, you know, the Unify and KEs of the world, plus say it's like a $4,000 display at a chain that sells pretty slow, you know? And sometimes as a brand, you think, crap, I'm not doing well. The product's something about it, it's not moving. And then you realize it's not even just you. It's like, all things considered, the store foot traffic is dead. You know, like at that point, it's like you can only sell so much no matter what you do. You can drive all your customers to go to the store, but you know, you're still very limited. So I think it's very important to not just accept any retailers unless that is your goal, to just, you know, increase as many doors as possible. And then you have tons of funding to pay for it and, just go very aggressively and be millions negative every single year, which a lot of companies do that. It's part of their like business model to just only focus on that like sales growth number.
Yeah, sure.
And
I think it's changing. It seems like it's changing a little bit with like the economic conditions. I feel like even in the last year, I've had so many more conversations around people who are less worried about top line and more worried about bottom line, which me being a finance person, that's always been a confusing thing to me to see people only worried about sales and not about making money. But it's funny when the economy kind of takes a downturn a little bit, sometimes that pivot happens.
Mm-hmm. I think with e-commerce based companies, they care a little bit more about bottom line. But when it comes to just strictly retail,
yeah,
they're totally.
I feel like retail is tough too, because unless you have a good system in place, you're sometimes flying a little bit in the dark. I've always thought, even in my experience, without like a TPM system, you're estimating what trade spend bill backs will look like, and you're hoping you're right. But those can be drastically off, and then you have a way bigger bill than you thought you were going to have, which throws everything off.
Yeah,
it is interesting how the retail world works. For you, has that been a huge component of your overall strategy since you're kind of slowing down door count? Are you trying to focus more on e-com?
We are trying to focus more on e-com. E-com was kind of something that I've totally neglected since day one. I think it's important to, in the beginning, obviously you start a company, you get your EIN. The first thing you do is you set up your website, mylklabs.com.
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to make sure this is mine. And then from there, it was kind of like, so to back it up 2 steps, I had no idea what I was doing because I never started a company before. I had 0 connections in the food and beverage industry. The only thing that I knew was my dad, who does also just like wholesale clothing manufacturing. So very, very like back end stuff, does not even have, the knowledge in this industry and how things work here. And then on my mom's side, she does commercial real estate development, which is a completely different
totally
industry.
Different. Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, if you can give me advice on this, they're just like, I've never set up a website before, or like, that kind of thing. So I went into it and I was like, all right, I'm going to start this website, use one of those free Shopify templates, put together this like website. I was like, wow, this looks amazing. We're going to kill it or whatever. And then you realize traffic really doesn't just come naturally. You really have to drive it. And being the only employee at Mylk Labs for, the first couple of years, to be honest, it was something where I knew I had to put all of my time and focus into something where I knew it was going to have the ROI I needed in order to grow.
Sure. And makes sense.
Selling a product that's, a $3 SRP, I need to move volume. I can't just be selling 6 packs and like expecting slinging 6 and 12 packs will, grow my company, especially that, obviously if I'm the one out there selling the product, growing the company, I don't have time to be in a commercial kitchen making the oatmeal myself. So I took a huge leap of faith when I first started the company and just decided to work with a co-packer. And the co-packer, so we started off with 3 SKUs. The co-packer required us a 20,000 minimum per SKU. So I was like, okay, I'll buy 60,000 units and I'll figure it out, right? So I invested a ton of money, which was like, everything that I saved from modeling. I got the product because it's hard to sell something that you don't physically have yet. And then I brought in all this product. Luckily, I was able to just like store it at my dad's warehouse. And
nice.
Okay, so who wants to buy my oatmeal? I have a ton of it, and it really just like lit this huge fire under my ass. And it was like, all right, sell. Don't let food go to waste. Don't let your investment go to waste, and do everything you can to just sell through before expiration.
Yeah.
It's a 12-month shelf life, which really means you have like 9 to 10 months. And that's cutting it real close because the customer needs to also have some time to think through it.
Right.
And ultimately, you know, grew just selling to a bunch of coffee shops, hotels, anybody that I can get a hold of. Because when I first started trying to sell to a grocery store, it didn't move. We were sitting at a $450 price point in the beginning. Nobody knew the brand. Everyone was buying Bob's Red Mill, Purely Elizabeth, and all those other big national brands that, you know, just had all this brand trust. And I was like, all right, this is not my market. I stopped pitching to grocery stores a few months into my business. And I was like, all right, I gotta go a different route. And I sold through everything. I was profitable my first year. It was actually insane.
Wow. Good for you. I was going to say, did you have, this is always interesting, I think. So when you produced all that and you knew you had to sell it, was it kind of like, I'm just going to go sell this? Or did you have a backup plan? Were you like, if I don't sell this, what was step 2?
There wasn't that. I was like, this is my only option. I have to make it work. It doesn't matter, you know, what comes my way. If it's a no, I'm going to follow up with you in a couple of months, and no is never a no forever. I was like very aggressive with my sales in the most friendly way. I think a lot of people could see how passionate I was about this new brand, and, you know, hearing from the founder and making everything very personalized and just like, hey, you know, how can I help you sell more oatmeal? Like, I even do that like now. I think a lot of my customers buy and work with Mylk Labs because they love who they're working with. And we show them that we care. And it's something where, say, a competitor comes in and tries to swoop on our business. They're like, no, we like the product. Our customers like the product. But more than anything, I'm loyal to not even Mylk Labs, but loyal to Grace.
Oh, that's good. I mean, that's powerful.
Yeah, and like it's funny because I have like national hotel chains that I work with, and I'll reach out to some of them like year end. I'm like, hey, you know, do you need anything before the year ends? Like, I can get you a reorder. I remember there was one customer I did that, and he was like, Grace, let's end your year on a good note. You tell me what I should order, and I'll take it. And I'm like, what? I was like, I'm not going to give you a pallet or anything. You probably sell through like 20 cases a month. So let's just do your regular order. So people.
Wow. But I mean, hey, that's powerful to even have that kind of relationship.
Yeah. And honestly, those relationships and the people that I've met just working, you know, like pitching to them and then becoming friends, I'm like sending memes and gifts like every day to my customers. And we just have such a great relationship. It makes work fun. Like, that's genuinely
what it's all about.
Yeah.
Very cool. That's awesome. So it sounds like you're in a good spot. I mean, it sounds like from just hearing the story today, you've gone from total concept, making it in your kitchen, to being on shelf, to selling it, to creating relationships. I mean, it sounds like things are going really, really, really well. What does the next 1 to 3 years look like in your eyes for the brand?
I think it's continuing to grow in our golden channel of food service, and then making sure that we nurture all of our retail accounts that we've taken on before, you know, expanding more with that side of things. And then ultimately launching new product lines outside of oatmeal, which, you know, for me, I've always been somebody that's on the go. Not so much now because I'm just like married to my computer with this business.
I know how that is. Yep.
But I think, so with Mylk Labs, and I'll end it with this. With Mylk Labs, our values, and, you know, we never compromise. Our values will always be flavor, nutrition, and convenience. Every single brand out there has, you know, compromised one of the three just for either, you know, like if it's convenient, then it tastes like shit. If it's healthy, then it's not convenient. If, you know, it's so hard to get a good balance of the three. And all three of those things are so important to me, especially, you know, from modeling from a decade ago to where I am at now. My health, my energy, my overall well-being is so important to me that I take care. I mean, without your health, you don't have anything. Truthfully.
100%. Say that all the time.
Yeah. So for me, I'm a snacker, you know, whether I come out with snack line or dessert line or whatever it may be, it will always hold all three of those values, and, you know, we'll never deviate from it. We'll never compromise. Very
cool. That's awesome, Grace. I mean, sounds like a really, really cool brand that you've brought to life and is scaling and growing. So good for you. As we quickly are almost out of time, the last two questions I love to ask. The first one is there any source of knowledge that you've either read, listened to, so whether it's a book, a podcast, an article, that you just want to share with the audience today that you thought was impactful?
To be honest, I have recently started just signing up for a ton of different newsletters. And most of them are like trade newsletters where it's like there's one that's D2C something. There's so many, like I can't think of the names off the top of my head.
Sure.
But just always educating yourself. I don't think there's one source that can just be like the Hail Mary of them all. I think learning from multiple people, different people's experiences, and just like taking whatever works for you and always taking it all with a grain of salt. And, you know, there's not one model that fits for everyone. It's more of trial and error, testing things out and seeing how that works for you.
Got it. I love that. Yeah, I'm constantly like signing up and then unsubscribing from ones that don't work. I do that all the time. So I'm with you on that one. The next question, this is my favorite one. When it comes to just getting shit done, so whether it's for your business, personal goals, business goals, whatever it may be, what tools do you use to plan your day and work towards getting the shit done, right? Like making progress. Is it pen and paper? Are you an app person? What do you use to organize your life and just get things done?
So I know a lot of people use different things like Asana or whatever. I honestly, in terms of my follow-ups, so obviously Google Calendar is like my go-to for everything. I have to like schedule my friends in onto my Google Calendar. Otherwise I would totally forget. But when it comes to like my follow-ups, I just use Excel, right?
Okay.
I put a date of when I reached out and when I need to follow up, put all the notes, and instead of paying for a very expensive CRM, Excel works wonderfully for me. I am so organized. I never miss a follow-up, and it's so easy for me to stay on track. In terms of like to-do lists and things I want to implement, I've got my notepad here and literally like a ton of different, just like all over my table. Notes. Yeah, just a bunch of Post-its, and you know, it's the only way that I can keep track of all the different things just like going on in my mind.
Sure.
Because if I don't write it down, if I don't have it in front of me, reminding me every single day until I cross it off with my pen, I'm not going to get it done. So being able to like, you know, it's like sometimes you write things down and then just to cross it off and you're like, yeah, I got this done. It feels so
Definitely.
Good.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I do know that. Yeah, no, I love that. I feel like I use pen and paper. I use Google Sheets a lot, or Excel. Yeah, I'm an Excel person too, and I notice I can organize what I need to get done when really quickly, and it's like a good place to just like dump things that I know I need to get done, and then organize it later, and then I can see it on my phone, which is nice. Mm-hmm. Love that.
Yeah, especially like nowadays, everyone's sold by all the different like tech and platforms and blah blah blah. I think it's so unnecessary, and especially as like a scrappy little startup like us, we try and save where we can. And honestly, I feel like I do better with my to-do list and what I gotta do every single day than people who pay $500 a month for a CRM or whatever it may be.
I'm with you. Yeah, you can do so much with just the simple tools around you. I totally agree. As we're running out of time, Grace, do you want to plug just how people can follow you and how they can follow the brand and how people can try the product?
Sure. I think the best place to go to is mylklabs.com, and it's spelled MYLKLABS.com.